I remember asking Cubby if it was true that he followed Fleming's dictum, which was to any adventure story, add all the advantages of expensive living. Give Bond the right clothes, the right background, and the right girls. Set your story in the most romantic and beautiful of places, and take your story along so fast that nobody notices the idiosyncrasies in them. And Cubby said, yes, that is true.
Of course, to create that beach in Dr. No, or the idyllic hideaway in Live and Let Die, they had to leave reality far behind, ignoring the poverty right next to their locations. It was what the audience clearly wanted. Dr. No was the biggest hit of its season, and the following films grossed even more. But this meant that each film had to provide yet more outrageous stunts than the one before. In the Jamaican swamplands, this need exposed James Bond to some full-grown crocodiles. The animals were wild and real, but Bond had to conjure an escape that was impossibly fantastic.
Now, this area is where a segment of the James Bond film, Live and Let Die, was done. And in that film, Bond was imprisoned on the island here. There was a drawbridge which went across to that section. He was put on the island, surrounded by crocodiles, the drawbridge removed, and then he was supposed to have been eaten. What he was able to do, or rather his double, was to jump across on the backs of some fairly large crocodiles to the other shore.
Cross Kananga ran across them, and actually the heel got snapped on one of them, one shot, which I would have gone completely.
Of course, in the finished film, Bond makes a perfectly executed escape. Given that he's a fictional figure in a film series that's exotic and unreal, what is the actual character of the hero, and how important is he?
Your whole card is the character of James Bond, who is more original, better loved, and more idiosyncratic than anything anybody else has.
Bond? James Bond? Do I know that?
In fact, Bond has surprisingly little personal history. All we know of him can be quickly summed up, despite his worldwide fame.
There are very few people who haven't heard of Bond. British Secret Service, 007, licensed to kill. He's good, even by my standards.
His mother was Swiss and his father was English, and they were killed in an avalanche. When he was 11 years old, he went to Eton, was thrown out, and then he went to his father's old school, and then he went into the military.
Commander James Bond, recruited to the British Secret Service from the Royal Navy, licensed to kill, and has done so on numerous occasions.
The essence of the fellow is, you know, he has a license to kill, and he has to protect king and country, and he has to save the world.
The name is Bond. James Bond. Is he?
Are you?
Yes.
He was a ruthless bastard in lots of ways, or a nice bastard in some ways. You know, he's one of those guys that you would want on your side, but you wouldn't want him around if you wouldn't trust him with your girlfriend. You know what I mean?
Bond's most obvious characteristic is precisely his attraction to the opposite sex.
James Bond is sort of almost every woman's ideal fantasy. He is not only very, very gorgeous, but he is intelligent. He has, there's an element of danger. He's elegant, he's sophisticated, and yet there is that raw edge of sexuality about him.
Perhaps you can have that too.
So he's very appealing to women, and I think not only to women, I think men also, of course, fantasize about being James Bond themselves. I have met more men that, regardless of where they're coming from, they still have a little bit of a fantasy about being James Bond themselves.
No!
The latent male chauvinism, which I suspect is in 90% of men, whether they admit it or not, Bond played to that, and the sexuality that is in more than 90% of women was also awakened by the character of Bond. And so he appealed to the basic instincts, I think, of both sexes. There are all kinds of evil women who are sometimes even more attractive than the good girl. And you're allowed to sleep with those because that's part of your mission. And you're always trying to trick her into something, and well, while you're sleeping with her, she's trying to kill you. And they're fun relationships.
Later.
Now what are you looking for?
I think in Russia with Love, for instance, in the famous scene in the bed there, and with Tatiana, he's getting information from her while making love to her. Albeit that he's being photographed at the same time from by the Russians. But I think he's almost aware of that as well. I think the phrase that springs to mind is the things I do for England, you know. He sort of almost prostitutes himself for the sake of the job, you know.
Why do Chinese girls taste different from all other girls?
You think we better, huh?
No, just different. Like Peking duck is different from Russian caviar, but I love them both.
Darling, I give you very best duck.
Stop, cut it, hold everything! Get him out of there!
The producers made women a weakness that could be almost fatal to Bond, but mostly the girls existed for him to use and dispose of with implausible ease.
I think we also recognize that it's in fun, that it's in love, everything is allowed.
But you do believe? I mean, really believe in the cards?
They have never lied to me.
Then they won't know.
And also I think we sort of have the sense that the women really want to be seduced.
Pick one.
Even so, Bond isn't above conning a girl whose powers of ESP depend on her being a virgin.
You knew the answer before it was given. Strangely enough, somehow, so did I.
Tricking Solitaire, I think, was part of the fun of Bond. I think that's why he tricked her with the tarot cards. They were all the same card, if I remember.
I thought Bond was not really a very nice guy. I mean, you know, Solitaire was cheated, big time. I mean, she was a virgin. She had the